Welcome back into the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from Awful Announcing, where we are not under new ownership or editorial. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing. That's Ben Axelrod, a senior editor at Awful Announcing, and the self-proclaimed most loyal viewer of Get Up.
I think you gave me that title. I was just paying homage to you.
Oh, you're welcome then, yeah. I thought about saying you're the only man who ever worked in local sports media to never win an Emmy based on your admission last week, but, you know, you got a few titles.
Yeah.
Today, everyone's arguing about Major League Baseball's broadcast schedule. We have our backlash to the Belichick Jordon Hudson story. But first, it's the end of NBA on TNT, a real institution. We've known it's coming, and they bid farewell to us Saturday night after Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Indiana Pacers beat the New York Knicks to head to the NBA Finals. I was actually a little emotional about this, Ben. Not like I was sitting there crying on my couch or anything, but it was a more impactful goodbye and farewell than I thought, especially because after months, if not, I might even be able to put an S at the end of years of knowing that this was happening and saying goodbye and all of it. It wasn't a surprise, but I don't know. I'm kind of the type of person that feels like the legacy of anything is the ripple effects that it has outward. And I think that's kind of what was hitting me. I was like, man, this is a generation of being a go-to place for basketball for people. And a legit like factory of broadcasting talent and people who have kind of made memories for our lives all over the industry now. So Kevin Harlan, Ernie Johnson giving their farewell was very fitting. And I think a lot of people were in their feelings as well on Saturday and Sunday as this institution kind of came to an end. What'd you think?
Yeah, as cliche as it is the end of an era, like especially for people around your age and my age, like our entire lives watching basketball, TNT has been a part of that, whether that's Thursday nights or whether that's the Eastern or Western Conference Finals, depending on the year. I can just speak from my own experience as a Cleveland Cavaliers fan and somebody who grew up in the LeBron James era. Like that 48-point game against Detroit in 2007 in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals, that was on TNT. And like, I remember that was on TNT. That's part of the experience for me is I can look back.
Wasn't that LeBron James with no regard for human life? Was that series?
No, that was the 2008 semifinals against Boston when he.
That was Marv though, right?
Yep, he dunked on Kevin Garnett. But that's like I can recall that, and I remember that game was on TNT. Like I can look back at a dozen sports memories throughout my life and not have any recollection of what TV station they were on or who was calling it.
Oh yeah.
It sticks out like a sore thumb that 48-point game against the Detroit Pistons in 2007 was on TNT. And I think, obviously there's inside the NBA, there's Reggie Miller, there's Kevin Harlan, there's Marv Albert, like there's all these personalities and talents, but there is something almost indescribable about just like the presence of TNT and the entirety of the presentation and the look and the feel and all of that now, even though we move forward with Inside the NBA still intact, we move forward with Reggie Miller moving to NBC, all the talent has pretty much landed somewhere. Like there is something that you can't quite put your finger on that the NBA is going to be missing moving forward without TNT.
That's what I wrote about in the Monday newsletter for Awful Announcing, is I was like, what I really was sitting with as it was ending is I was like, it was something. Yeah, like we bashed ESPN last week. We don't have to do the comparison, but that's not something. I don't feel a history, a nostalgia, an energy, nothing. It's just that's where I turn on the basketball game. I like the NBA, so I get excited, but there's nothing on the edges of it that I care about. And not even just ESPN. I mean, you could go out of the NBA, and there's a lot of places that would aspire to being something that cover a variety of sports. I mean, you kind of mentioned, I think, like the NFL on Fox last week when we were doing our announcer draft. That gets close, right? Like I kind of know what that is, but yeah, it's hard to do. I saw a graphic on X this week of all of the score bugs over the years. from TNT, and I think it was only used for one season, but for whatever reason, it felt like the one to me. And I literally was listening to one of the Barry brothers call a Suns playoff series again. Like when I saw the scorebook, like that's how deep seated this stuff is. So yeah, it's not going to be the same. I mean, I feel like the thing people are most worried about, even though, yeah, Kevin Harlan will be at Amazon, Reggie will be at NBC, Allie LaForce sounds like she might be taking a year because she's having a baby, and Harlan alluded to that in his farewell and whatever. The Inside the NBA elephant in the room, right? We know it's not ending. We've known that. We've covered the ins and outs of the business side of that, and now this era is over, and I think people are worried, most notably Bill Simmons and others who have just put a very fine point on it. He said they're going to fuck it up. ESPN's gonna ruin the show, and I think people are rightly worried about that. I don't know what to think, but I really have a hard time imagining that this is going to be the one time that bucks the trend of ESPN meddling in something that they shouldn't.
I disagree. I actually feel somewhat cautiously optimistic that Inside the NBA is going to largely remain unchanged. I do think the most valid concern is the programming aspect. Like, how are they going to fit the show into these windows? How is it going to work in conjunction with SVP? How is it going to work in conjunction with the local ABC affiliates when they get the game? But like the idea of ESPN just like foisting Stephen A. Smith onto that set, I don't think it's going to happen. And my main source of optimism is Pat McAfee. Like, Pat McAfee's show is still Pat McAfee's show. It is an autonomous show. I don't think ESPN could screw up Pat McAfee's show the way it probably wants to if it could. Like, I think it's written into these contracts, the way they're leasing them, that they get creative control. And like, you watch Pat McAfee's show. I don't know how often you watch it or how recently you've watched it.
Every day. I'm the Pat McAfee show's most loyal viewer. If you're Get Up's most loyal viewer,
like, does it feel like an ESPN show? Like, to me, it feels like a show that happens to be on ESPN. If it wasn't for the Chiron, you wouldn't even know.
It feels like a podcast still, which is like a big notch on a win for McAfee, frankly, that he's kept it that way. And I trust that the people in Atlanta who make Inside the NBA will be doing their best to keep it the way that they want it to be with this show. But to play devil's advocate a little bit, I guess, I agree. Like, it's probably like legally not allowed for them to exert the level of influence that we think that they might. But I think some of what you just mentioned could affect it, right? Like, the programming stuff is not an insignificant wrinkle here where, we all just, it sounds like a knock on it, but Inside the NBA benefits from leaving it on accident almost, right? Like, at the end, late at night, it becomes this like haze of like it's like a late night show. That's the comparison people give it, and I think it's apt. And so if you have to jump around and follow it to a new network, and you're having to, okay, where is it tonight, and what am I going to, and it becomes this, and then it's like, well, tonight's not as good as it was last night, and then you get frustrated like that. I don't know. It's not huge, but that is going to change. And then I think the other thing is, like, even if the inside crew says no to something, right? If ESPN says, hey, Stephen A is available tonight, bring him on. Or, hey, do you want to collaborate with SVP? That could be cool. Even if TNT says no, well, then that's friction. And then the relationship gets messy. And then, they go on air and they're grumpy. And then it's a comment about, oh, well, good thing Stephen A's not out here. He'd be ruining the whole thing. And then they're just talking about that. And it's not, I just worry that there's too much external noise already for it to just be insulated and pure and this like perfect thing that we all want it to continue to be.
I think like I'm really just not concerned about the content, because I even feel like they'll link, like you've even seen it already where they're calling out ESPN and like, I mean, we write about it all the time. They make these snide little comments about ESPN. And I think they almost like play it up. Like they like to have that friction. It's
how much do you think Shaq's TNT's FCC fine for Shaq's F-bomb was, by the way? That was a nice parting shot.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what the rules are for TV anymore. Like back when I was a kid, like, it's like, you just like couldn't do that. You couldn't say that on TV.
The FBI would be cuffing him.
Yeah, like it wasn't legal. So I don't know how that works. I think the most valid concern is the schedule is different. Like, we already know the schedule is going to be different. They're just not going to be on anymore or as much. Like they're not going to be on anymore in the sense of how we're accustomed to them being on. Like I think Charles Barkley alluded to the fact their schedule is basically going to be half of what it is currently at TNT. So that's going to be an issue for them. I do think, and you kind of alluded to this, like where it could get messy, but also where I think it has the potential to have upside is the streaming service, the direct-to-consumer ESPN streaming service, because that does give them some flexibility. Like you could say, hey, like give them a little teaser, give them an appetizer, and then the rest of the show is going to be on the streaming service. Now, I don't think that's going to be ready come November, like to be that seamless, but I do think ESPN's goal eventually would be this all exists just in the same place, and you just have to flip over to whichever part of the ESPN app you want to watch it on. Now,
it's a tile instead of a channel or whatever.
Exactly. So I mean, that's what they're going for. It's like, hey, if you want to watch SVP, you can watch SVP. If you want to watch highlights from the game, if you want to watch inside the NBA, it's just a matter of how quickly they get there. And I think
are Barkley and Erning going to be around long enough for the tech to catch up? Like, I mean, how many years do we have here?
That's I think the most valid concern is like, it would be overly optimistic to think they're going to be ready for that come November or December or this season even. And at that point, like, then the clock is running. Like I think we know we only have, I'd set the over under for this iteration at 2.5 years. And at that point, like you really got to get this thing humming if it's ever going to be what you think it could be on ESPN.
And maybe it's just Shaq and whatever after that, but yeah, I don't think it'll be some watered down, Brian Curtis at The Ringer wrote that article 2-3 years ago where he literally counted. He had a stopwatch out for how long the snippets of chatter were back when Greeny was hosting and Woj was still there and everything. And it was usually less than 2 minutes of a full segment of being on air, pregame and halftime and everything, and like people were speaking for 15 seconds at a time. Like, it's not going to be that. If it's that, there's no reason to go through all the hoops that they have to give up college football and basketball inventory that's not insignificant and, get in bed in this way, make such a scene of it, all that sort of stuff. But I do think the friction concerns are at least reasonable, and I don't expect this one to be as seamless as the Pat McAfee show replaces SportsCenter and we leave it alone for 2 hours and it kind of just happens.
Yeah, but like McAfee's calling out ESPN executives like on ESPN airwaves. Like I feel like McAfee is way more contentious than like Charles Barkley making, a joke about who he works for and, hey, you can fire me or whatever. Like
it won't be like confrontational, but I guess all I'm worried about is the ruining of the show. Cause I like the show. I don't really care if the Pat McAfee show got ruined. I agree with you. Yeah. It seems to be mostly intact. Although if we did a Tales from the subreddit, or views from the subreddit, it would be very different. They seem to think it's like it's been ruined or whatever, but I don't even care about that because I don't like the Pat McAfee show. But I care about it with NBA on TNT or Inside the NBA because I like it. And I actually have hope for my ESPN experience now for the first time in years. I just don't want it to be worse. But, yeah, I don't know. We don't know what it'll be.
I think there are definitely hurdles to clear. I think it would be naive, extremely naive. And maybe I'm being naive thinking that they can clear those hurdles. But, like, I think the paths are there. Like, I just don't, I disagree with this jumping to the conclusion that it's instantly going to be Stephen A. Smith sitting up there with them and just a total ESPN-ified show, because the only one-of-one comparison we have to this is Pat McAfee. And what we've seen is them give Pat McAfee pretty much total autonomy over his show. There's no, like, the idea of ESPN meddling and ruining things is really only applicable to ESPN properties. It's not something we've seen them do to.
It's a new era.
Right.
It's
a new era. So this will definitely be a very fascinating data point for this new era of ESPN.
Why is this story, like, people love to make fun of awful and why does this matter? Even in our YouTube comments, who cares? What are you talking about this for? One, it's our job. There's an audience for it. But two, some of this stuff breaks through. Like, everybody's been talking about this. Bill Simmons, like, made a segment about it on his show. He clearly had some thoughts, being so blunt, saying that they were going to fuck it up and everything. But is it just because it's so beloved? People just cherish this show, and it's just interesting to me when some of the nerdy stuff that we dissect here or on our website actually breaks through and becomes like a real national story. And this one very clearly has.
It's an institution. It's something that, like, we've all watched. It's, like, I think universally beloved. Like, to steal a Bill Simmonsism, if you were at a party and somebody was saying, like, I really don't like Inside the NBA, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, everybody likes Inside the NBA. I think the personalities involved, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, probably chief among them, like, that makes it just fascinating. And that's the other part is, like, if anything happens, if ESPN starts to meddle, like, Charles Barkley is going to be on the Dan Patrick show the next day. Like, it's Dan Patrick or Charles Barkley is more outspoken than Pat McAfee even about this kind of stuff. So that's another thing that gives me my cautious optimism. But yeah, I just think the personalities involved in the institution, and we really, I think, have so few sports media properties that you could compare to Inside the NBA that I don't even know, like, where else you would go in terms of comparing it. It's none of the NFL studio shows. It's
Game Day.
Yeah.
That's about it, right?
Yeah, that's probably it. So Game Day. And if Game Day, if ESPN ever lost college football for some reason and they wanted to start leasing out College Game Day to Netflix, that would be a pretty big story too, I would imagine.
We've heard too. I mean, they're going to have some places where ESPN can obviously fit in, right? Like pregame, they always bring a reporter on. Well, that's just going to become, Lisa Salters or whatever in this case. And there will be opportunities that it's natural. I think SVP is a team player enough where it wouldn't be shocking if there was some kind of crossover or talk back thing where it transitions or, whatever it might be. I think that's is going to be natural, but we'll have to see. Ben, if I told you that last night we're moving right now, I was bringing some donation, like the donation pile in a laundry basket into my trunk of my car outside, and I ran into a dude in my property somewhere around like between my and your age, so young. And he was taking the trash out, and he had his phone in his pocket playing a podcast. Who would you guess, based on less than minimal description I just gave you? I could give you more if you wanted to help the guess. Who would you guess was playing from that speaker?
Pardon my take.
I would agree, right? Like something like that. And I kind of was overhearing it. I've run into him a little bit, but I don't know him at all. We just kind of, hey, whatever. Tony Kornheiser. I don't know if it was his podcast. I don't know if it was PTI in podcast form or a YouTube video or something. I was floored. I probably could have given 5 guesses before I got to the elder statesman of sports media.
That's wild.
And so I bring that up because I have a new segment for us. I've had it in our notes here for a while, but I've never presented it to you. It's called Book Tour minus the book.
Okay.
It's somebody who is suddenly on every goddamn sports talk show in the industry for seemingly no reason, although the one I'm going to give you right now, I do know the reason. Brian Windhorst is the inaugural winner, I guess you could say winner, of the Book Tour minus the book. We could call it an award. Maybe that's a way to mix it up. He was on last week, the Tony Kornheiser Show, Pardon My Take, the Rich Eisen Show, the Dan Patrick Show, and the Ryan Russillo podcast. He's become like basketball is happening, so Brian Windhorst is gonna do a hit on the thing you listen to and watch. Like, sometimes even if ESPN doesn't have like a big thing going on or anything to plug, it's just like he is basketball. He's the guy who represents that you should be paying attention to the NBA right now.
He did this locally in Cleveland right before the start of the playoffs, where he was on every. Well, he typically only does the ESPN affiliate. He has a long relationship with them, the radio station. He did every local podcast, big and small, in Cleveland right before the playoffs. He did our Locked On podcast. He did a couple of other local just Cavs podcasts. We have one that's affiliated with the team, I believe. He was everywhere. I don't know if he likes having a microphone in front of him. I don't know if he just says yes to every request he gets. He's obviously an incredible podcast guest. Like, he is. So my relationship with Part of My Take is it's not a part of my regular rotation, but I have fallen into the habit of listening to episodes based on the guest, which is AAA for me when it comes to my podcast rotation. And which is a big deal. Like, we've joked about me listening at 1.5 speed because I can't keep up with all my podcasts. So to even put it in the AAA, I'll check in, see who you have on. That's a big deal. And I just think those guys are such great interviewers. But that's like when they have Brian Windhorst on, it is a auto listen, and they had him on fairly recently. So yeah, he says yes to everything, or he just likes having a microphone in front of him.
Good at it. So I don't complain, but it's funny when these people, it's like, I just end up, my media brain goes into action. Like, is there something that they're quietly there for? Like, is there a documentary that they were a talking head on that I missed? Is there some kind, are they, I don't know.
His contract's coming up. His contract's coming up here soon. Might be good.
He did the Ringers Press Box Media podcast a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or more now, and they asked him about his future, and he didn't seem like he was pitching himself to move. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think he's
all right. Let's get into it. MLB's media future comes into focus this weekend. Ben, the Yankees and Dodgers played, thing of the present. Interleague play is long dead, and these things happen now, and they are able to be programmed really well. This was a rematch of last year's World Series. Of course, it features the AL and NL perennial MVP favorites in Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, and on down the line of superstars on each side. And people got very upset that the first game of this series was on Apple TV Plus. I just want to start there because it's a good way into the future of this ESPN package after the opt-out, and the future of the whole league's media rights, which are going to be talked about for they're taking the baton from the NBA and the TNT saga, and it's just going to be baseball now for a while until they're able to find their partners of the future here. But what did you think of this outside of it's a very niche issue, of course, but that's what we do here. What were your thoughts as everybody was bickering about the start time and Apple TV as a platform and a waste of a game and blah, blah, blah?
I didn't really make anything of it in the sense that these are going to be nationally televised games every year that the Dodgers and Yankees play moving forward. And you would expect the national media rights partners to each get their piece of that pie. It's the biggest possible matchup that baseball could have in terms of markets and in terms of star power. And so it makes sense. To your point,
Fox had Saturday, ESPN had Sunday as usual. So that was the rest of it.
Yeah. So Apple just happens to come first because that's right there. That's their deal. They get Friday night. And so I feel like Sunday Night Baseball's probably still the bigger entity. I feel like Fox has its part. And I just think anytime the Dodgers and the Yankees play, and you could probably insert a handful of other teams into that rotation, you can expect all three games to be nationally televised, and you can expect them to probably be split across the 3 or 4 partners they happen to have at the time. So I was surprised there was so much eyebrow raising and so much bickering about it, because I that's how I would have drawn it up if you would have asked me what's the Yankees-Dodgers series going to look like.
It just felt like the epitome of beating a dead horse. It's Friday nights are on Apple. Do you want to, are we talking about a time machine? Are we talking about breaking a contract here? Like, what? That's what happens. So the alternative would have been that it was only available on Spectrum, and yes, then we would have been more angry because you couldn't have watched it unless you had MLB TV or whatever. And to your point, Sunday Night Baseball drew 2.7 million viewers. It was the highest rated Sunday Night Baseball game in 7 years. I don't even think it was like that close of a game.
I was going to say it was like a blowout. It was, I think, 6-0 within the first couple of innings.
Yeah, I had it on, and I think it was 6-0 already. So I thought it was a little bit silly too. And in the newsletter on Monday, I kind of gave my take, which is like, get mad at Apple. They've blown building this platform out where the MLS deal is kind of a problem. And, you know, they won an Oscar for a movie a couple years back. They had Ted Lasso and some of these breakout hits, Severance this year and all that. And yet it's still kind of this niche thing, this like boutique, like Apple can kind of flaunt that they're in business with really famous people, but it's not exactly this well of awesome content. They have this weird thing, not to get into like Hollywood business or whatever, but it's like they're already renting out movies through their main platform. So it's never going to quite be Netflix, whatever. That's the issue. But MLB signing a big deal with Apple for one game a week and then putting games on that time each week, I don't have an issue with that. But it does beg the question going forward of like, where should baseball be putting its games, and how do you thread that needle?
Well, so that's kind of what I was going to ask you is this a streaming issue or is this an Apple issue? Like if the game had been on Netflix or if it had been on Amazon Prime or any of these
YouTube, where they used to put some games,
where we've become accustomed to watching sports, would that be as big of an issue? Or is this is not only streaming, but this is like a platform that nobody I know uses on a regular basis, except for when the latest season of Presumed Innocence comes out. Like I don't know anybody.
My mom uses it. I'll tell you that. She every 2 weeks she's asking me if I've watched the latest show, and I straight up have never heard of them when she brings them up to me. But maybe middle-aged women is the demographic. I think it is an Apple issue, which is, again, why I say get mad at Apple. Like, they were being billed as one of the future, you know, if you go back to 2022 when that deal was signed, they were being thrown around as they could bid for NBA rights. They could be an NFL draft site or a Sunday ticket or whatever. And MLS bet the farm on them too. So, yeah, I guess the lesson is you would think maybe don't go that direction again. And yet, here we are with a report from Austin Karp of Sports Business Journal that Apple TV is a leading candidate to take over not all, but some of the rights that ESPN's giving up, which would just be for 2 seasons until the full deal is all the way over. Of course, ESPN and MLB had a mutual opt-out earlier this year for the final 2 seasons starting next year. So ESPN had Sunday Night Baseball, which we just talked about, the wild card round, which is now a thing because they play the best of 3 series, and then the home run derby. So we've kind of like, it doesn't seem like anybody wants all of that, maybe because MLB's putting the price tag a little bit too high. I don't know. We also heard NBC is a serious contender for just Sunday Night Baseball, basically to complete its calendar, right, of football, or I guess it would be basketball into baseball, into football on Sunday nights if you go January through December, but maybe not the wild card stuff or the home run derby, whatever. And that, like, we don't know what role Peacock would play or anything else, but that's kind of like right there the decision that baseball will have to make, and that a lot of these networks have to make, unless you're football where you can be everywhere. It's like, how do you strike that balance of money, probably from streamers, versus visibility on networks? And it's like staring baseball in the face now. If NBC on, network broadcast traditional old-fashioned TV versus Apple that nobody has, that only my mom cares about, I think that it couldn't be more blatant, and I think it is a hard decision.
I think it's a really hard decision. I think it's hard. It's harder for baseball too than it would be for the NFL and maybe to a lesser degree the NBA, because I think the NFL just has to have the utmost confidence wherever we put our product, our fans are going to follow. We can make, I mean, I talk about this all the time. This is probably the fifth time I've referenced this on the show. What a big deal it was for an NFL playoff game to be on Peacock. And now we don't even bat an eye when Peacock has any sort of exclusive NFL content, because the NFL built that out. That was like how they built that bridge. Baseball, I mean, it sounds like this is for the wild card round, which I guess so my thing with baseball at this point is just like, get your money and get to the next deal. Get your money, make up whatever you can make back from what you're losing from ESPN opting out, and get to the next deal where you sell the rights. And that's where you have to make the hard decisions. I don't know how this would be a valuable investment.
But you are kind of charting your course, right? Like, you're sort of playing your hand. You're saying, we would like for this company to be our partner for the next deal too, right? I mean, you don't want to jump around and burn bridges unless you have to. So I would imagine they're thinking about it a little bit of like 2 + 10 or something in terms of years.
Yeah, I mean, you're making inroads, and I mean, in that sense, maybe it is good to go to Apple, feel out what that's like, and decide if like we think there's an upward trajectory here, or if this is just going to be the blowback we faced after Dodgers Yankees every year come the wild card round. I do. So how much of the wild card round would it be? It wouldn't be every game, right? Would it be?
I'm not. I don't. You know, I don't watch them all. So
yeah. Well, so that would be my concern.
2024.
That would be my concern for baseball, would be like, if you're just sticking like a series or two on there, or I guess it would be more my concern for Apple. Like, you're only getting those fan bases. Like, if I do not think the wild card round is going to draw a national audience enough on a subscription model. It might happen on Fox. It might happen on NBC. It might happen on ESPN. I don't think, average baseball fan who's a Yankees fan and the Guardians happen to be playing the Tigers, I don't think they're going to sign up for Apple TV to watch that.
So last year, it is all on ESPN. That's what I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that changes
but it's one of those things where it's best of 3, so they can be over really quick. You could have a minimum of 8 games of inventory, maximum of 12. It's not really some kind of huge thing. And to your point, it's like, I think even some casual baseball fans, this is a new invention. If their team kind of scuttles into this round, are they really going to sign up for a new service just to watch it? Yeah. And it's the worst teams, because it doesn't even include the best top seeds, obviously. So I agree with you. Maybe that is where the negotiating is. It seems like it's also interesting that the main reporting we've heard is more about the Sunday night stuff. Right? So it's almost like I think baseball might just be valuing this too much. Jeff Passan did an interview recently that I wrote about where he went very much on the keep local, don't do this harebrained Rob Manfred scheme of trying to package all 30 teams' rights together and sell them to some kind of, thing within a thing on ESPN or Prime Video. He was like, that's bad. Keep games on national as big of a reach as you can. Don't do the Roku deal. Don't do the Peacock deal. Don't do the, he didn't know about this Apple rumor, but obviously they already have the report. They already have the games now. So he was like, those were all mistakes. I get it, but I think you have to kind of split the difference. I just don't think it's sustainable, especially when you're talking about, it'd be different if their partners like football were, Fox and CBS as the backbone, and then you go from there. But Fox is the only place. Everything else is on cable. Like, Fox has a couple of national games a week, and then I don't even think every playoff game is on Fox until the LCS. So they're really hidden right now, even with relying on cable. There's a whole portion of an audience that you're just not touching. So I don't know. I think the smartest thing would be to kind of break it down And if Prime Video or Netflix or these bigger platforms aren't interested, they're not interested. And you might just have to go with Apple. You don't get to force the biggest ones to come pay you hundreds of millions of dollars just because that would be ideal. If Netflix doesn't want baseball, they don't want baseball.
Yeah, that's well put. And I think the biggest conundrum that they're facing is like, they're not the NFL, they're not the NBA. They don't have this leverage that the other leagues necessarily have. And it's, beggars can't be choosers. And I think baseball right now, after the ESPN opt out, is a little bit of a beggar here when it comes to making up that money and the way of the future when it comes to not just its national rights, but its local rights.
You been to a Guardians game this season?
Have I been to a Guardians game this season? I have not. My wife and kids went to a day game last week, but I was working. So they actually beat the Dodgers, as fate would have it. So, no, but I have not. You been to a Diamondbacks game?
I think we're going with my family for the Padres are in town. My parents are moving to San Diego, and I've adopted the Padres. So we're all going to one of the games that weekend.
So
I tried to go to see Paul Skeens when he was in town last week, and the D-backs PR team was a complete nightmare. So shout out to them.
So do you do split jersey? Do you do Diamondbacks jersey with a Padres cap? Or are you full on Padres are my team? I'm going to go to the stadium rocking Padres gear.
No, I'm not going to be the obnoxious fan who's neither of these. This team's not playing today, but I love them so much that I need to tell you about it. But I definitely lean Padres because I gotta say AJ Preller and that group's made it a lot easier. The D-backs did make the World Series 6 months after I adopted the Padres, so I spent hundreds of dollars to go be part of that, so I could have that memory, even though I had just written them off. And I have one D-backs hat. I do wear that from time to time because the black just matches more stuff than the yellow and the brown. Just being realistic there.
Yeah.
But, the Padres are just better, so it's easy.
Yeah. I had a Diamondbacks hat growing up. It was the black one with the script D. And baseball was in this phase where it was really into doing metallic gold or metallic silver. I remember the Mariners and the Astros all had metallic brims. And I think the gold on the D was metallic. So my son's actually getting to this age too. He's 4 where you just buy a bunch of sports gear. He's going to have a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander t-shirt by the end of the week. And so that's how I was growing up too. It never really reflected my fandom.
No, same. I think my first NBA jersey, I think I asked for my birthday or Christmas or whatever one year, it was 2006, both a Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki jersey. The two, they had just played in the finals, and I was like, I like both of them, and neither of them are Phoenix team, but I'm in. Yeah,
that's my son will have an SGA and a Halliburton shirt by the time June's over. So I
called embracing fun, and more of us should do it.
Exactly. All right, and finally, this is a weird topic to talk about because we don't really know how it's going to hit by the time you guys are hearing this, but I still feel like it's such a fascinating story. I would like to talk about it. I think you'd like to talk about it. And it's the Pablo Torre versus Bill Simmons feud. And so we were originally going to frame this around our semi-regular segment, Wagyu or cheesesteak. And if you would have asked me on Monday, I would have definitely said Wagyu. This is a beef. This is a legitimate beef. What Bill Simmons said about Pablo, the way Pablo responded, there's a lot of layers to it as well. But now here we are on Tuesday recording this, and I have to say it's going to be cheesesteak because I don't know about you. We now know, thanks to Dan Le Batard, that Pablo is going to be on Bill Simmons' podcast. I presume this is the Bill Simmons podcast that comes out on Wednesday, hence why you probably will have already heard it before you hear this, unless you have us ahead of Bill Simmons in your podcast rotation, in which case, thank you. However, I feel pretty confident it's going to be a pleasant conversation. I do not think these two. I don't think Pablo's going to go on Bill's podcast and wage war. I don't think Bill's rhetoric will mirror what he said on the rewatchables about Pablo. I think it's going to be a pretty tame conversation. I think it'll be an interesting conversation. But I don't like, I think this beef is probably over. So I'm going to go cheesesteak. Do I need to set this up anymore? Like, do people know what we're talking about if they're listening to this podcast?
Well, it is a little weird that it came on a movie podcast. I feel like Rewatchables Bill Simmons is like Joe Rogan Experience Elon Musk back when he would go get high on that show before he started talking about how immigrants were taking over the country or whatever he's doing now. It's like just unhinged Bill. I don't know what happens. And he started talking about how, Pablo's dining off of tabloid fodder and he's a fake reporter and blah, blah, blah. I don't think he necessarily believes all of that, but Pablo responded on X and they kind of had a minor back and forth. And then, yeah, you're right. It now sounds per Dan that this will be hashed out for all of us to hear. Pablo seemed to want to talk to Bill as part of his reporting. I don't know if that was kind of a tease or if there's anything real. I don't quite understand why Bill would have a direct involvement with any of this unless there's a whole lot we don't know. But I'm over the, like, we've named a segment after this on our show, the Jordon Hudson line. What is okay and what is not okay to cover? What is like reasonable reporting material and what is not? And this clearly crosses that threshold. So can everybody at least find a reasonable criticism of this story or the way that anybody is approaching it beyond, oh, you're in his bedroom and this is People Magazine shit and whatever? It's not. It's very important. There are real journalists also doing stuff here. Does Bill Simmons want to, for instance, lash out at people who work at The Athletic because they have covered this, or New York Times, or Mike Florio? Like, it's real. It's legit. We don't need to do that. So I hope that at least gets flushed down the toilet by the time that they have their little sit down here.
Yeah. And so to set this up again a little bit, so Bill is doing an episode of the Rewatchables, which is their movie podcast, not like an evergreen podcast, like, or it is an evergreen podcast, a podcast where you can listen to it whenever. And so I don't know.
The movie that in question was from the 70s. So this is not newsworthy.
It was Heaven Can Wait, which I best know as, I believe Chris Rock remade it as Down to Earth, which was one of my favorite movies in like the year 2000, which was 25 years ago. So this was about the movie that was based on. And so Bill's criticism was out of nowhere, says Pablo Torre would have done a long podcast about Leo Farnsworth trying to practice with the team and then done a media tour afterwards. I've never seen anybody dine on a stupider story for a week and a half while pretending you're a journalist. What the fuck was that? Seriously. Then he later added, Belichick's dating a girl. Oh, let me do 9 shows about it. Settle the fuck down. Bill
is funny. Like, you got to give him that. I mean,
he's objectively funny. This came out of nowhere. So this was clearly something he wanted to get off his chest. I don't know when they recorded it. It came out on May 27th. It didn't become like publicly acknowledged until June 1st. For some, like, nobody heard this and thought like, oh, I'm going to clip this. This is wild, until the Reddit,
our buddy
Bill Simmons. Yeah. The Bill Simmons Reddit Twitter account posted about it. So I'll push back on both sides. One, like Bill to downplay it as, oh, Belichick's dating a girl. Like, that's not the story. The story is not Belichick's dating a girl. The story is Bill Belichick
is proven by the fact that it wasn't covered until it became more than that. He's been dating her for years. It's only been a story for 6 months because he became a powerful head coach who mattered, and she was very involved.
Right. And the story is not even that they have a 49-year-old age gap, even though I think that like has become kind of an undercovered fact in all this. We don't have to justify this being a story. Like, this is obviously a story for several reasons. I mean, to Bill's point, Pablo was everywhere. Like, it's not, I don't think it's just like, oh,
book tour minus the book. He should have won. I mean,
Yeah, Pablo was everywhere. He wasn't turning down very many interview requests, it seemed like. And so, like, I understand the avenue to mock Pablo there. Like, I think that's fair game. And I think even Pablo would probably admit as much. But, like, Pablo also has a podcast to grow and, a company to help grow in Meadowlark Media. And so, like, I think, when you are getting this sort of mainstream, frankly, worldwide attention, like, you should capitalize on it, which I think is what Pablo was doing. The other part about the two other parts, Bill talked about Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson on his podcast on multiple occasions, like out of nowhere, like with Ryan Russillo, like they did for a couple of weeks, at least, like weekly updates on where are you at with this. So like the idea that Pablo was just out of line, again, just totally crazy. The other
if anything, I would just say, and clearly I'm a little on Pablo's side here, but like, if anything, reporting about it is probably like the better way to approach it than just bullshitting about it on an NBA podcast, right? Like,
you don't think that's a better way than saying like, oh, my wife's friends are asking me about this now? Like that's the crux of your.
Yeah. We're all gossiping about it. At least Pablo's calling people.
Yeah. I didn't realize like, I love Bill Simmons. I think Bill Simmons is underrated in terms of like what he means to our little economy and the internet and sports journalism. But like, come on, the idea that like Pablo Torre doing this is out of line in some way is insane. The other thing I just as a longtime observer of Bill Simmons is this anything more than him just being a Patriots fan? Like that's the most amazing thing to me about Bill Simmons is he is in his mid-50s. He is a multimillionaire times over, and he still views his teams with the same fervor and through the same lenses that I did when I was like 14 years old. Like I could not view the Cleveland, granted it's the Cleveland Browns. I could not view them in the same light at 36 and way less successful than Bill Simmons views the Patriots at 55 and way more successful. So like, is this just him being a Patriots fan?
I mean, if you had gotten 3 World Series, 145 Super Bowl titles, and 3 NBA championships, or 2, I guess, in this century, maybe you would have hung on a little harder like he did. So to give him that, but yes, this is absolutely what it is. And this brings me to and I want to circle back to another element of the beef part of it that you have in here too, between Simmons and Pablo, but it brings me to like the backlash to the Belichick thing more broadly that is sort of happening, where I think like if you listened to, and we covered it a bit here on Awful Announcing, Simmons' reaction to, hey, back to Apple TV, that documentary that they did about the Patriots. I can't remember what it was called. I didn't watch it, but
the Dynasty.
There you go. He was legitimately pissed at how it did Belichick dirty. It framed his interview moments that were cut into the footage. Like it would have Kraft or somebody saying something bad about Belichick, and then Belichick wouldn't necessarily know he was responding to that, and then all of a sudden he looks like kind of an idiot or just looks like a little, lacking power, out of touch with everything that was going on, whatever it might be. So, like, that should tell you what you need to know. He thinks Belichick's legacy and role in that dynasty has been tarnished a little bit, and he probably sees this happening and thinks, it's my guy. I don't know if they even have a relationship, but I respect this dude. I care. So I'm going to defend him a little bit. I think that's totally what it is. But I don't know how much of a connection you see to the Channing Crowder thing that we didn't really talk about on the podcast last week, but he's a co-host of The Pivot. The Pivot did a very odd jump cut filled softball interview with Belichick after he had taken the majority of the heat. It's the beginning of which didn't even include Channing Crowder. It was just Ryan Clark, who co-hosted Inside the NFL with Belichick and obviously competed against him in Pittsburgh and everything. Just those two kind of like going through a laundry list of problems Belichick had with how he was being portrayed and how Jordan was being portrayed. Crowder comes out and says that Hudson had a significant hand in crafting how that went down. Then he has to backtrack, and then the segment on his radio show locally in Miami where he talked about it is then scrubbed from the internet. So it's like, just as quickly as the walls were kind of caving in on Belichick, and I was on here saying, I don't know if one or both of them is going to be gone by August, you got, the game day crew, Ryan Clark, WQAM apparently in Miami, all doing damage control and kind of saving Belichick a little bit from the shots he was taking. And I think this Simmons thing fits into that. Like, there is a segment of NFL media and in the NFL world that is just like, he's not going down like this. We're not going to let it happen.
Yeah, I mean, that pivot thing, that was directly connected to Belichick. Like, he was involved. He was in the interview. Yeah. It's funny. I was the one to go back and listen to the Channing Crowder comments, which ironically I was tipped off by because Pablo Torre included them in his second deep dive on Bill Belichick and Jordon Hudson. So I went back and listened and wrote them up. And when he said choreographed, he said Jordon helped choreograph the open of the interview. I was like, what does that mean? Like the way they walked in, like the way they were seated, like what? I don't like choreograph. I think of like dance. And then when you listen to the first three questions of the interview, you like kind of know exactly what he meant. Like it's
questions and heavy quotes.
It's very,
like, here's a thing. Say something.
It's very A to B to C. Like, what do you think of the way you're being covered? Who is Jordon Hudson? How does she help you focus on football? Like, those aren't the exact questions, but that was like the gist of like, it was.
And then there's one portion where it cuts and Belichick just goes, and the Hard Knocks thing. And he just unloads. Like, it was goofy.
So I think this probably falls more in line with the game day stuff, where game day just went over the top in defending Belichick. Although like game day obviously has something to gain by being friendly with Bill Belichick heading into the 2025 college football season. But yeah, like I think Bill, especially in light of Tom Brady's success post Patriots, like you can tell just as somebody who listens to a lot of Bill Simmons content, he is very protective of Bill Belichick's legacy. And so I ultimately, to bring this full circle here, I think this was just like diehard Patriots fan Bill coming out and just like firing one across the bow on behalf of his guy.
Belichick is well respected and has friends in high places. I would actually think that this is a place where you've seen like the athlete media go easier on Bill Belichick than maybe the traditional media, right? Like you're not seeing Shannon Sharp or people like that bash Belichick the way that they would if it was somebody less accomplished or somebody outside of like in a different sport, for instance, if it was Greg Popovich, had a scandal of some kind or something. I think the football institution seems to kind of be rallying around Bill. And I agree. The Simmons thing doesn't quite exactly fit into that, but it just kind of is an emblem of the backlash to, I guess, the backlash that Belichick got hit with when the Hudson stuff started to kind of spiral out of control, but we still got a long way to go. 2 months before football will be played.
We'll know the answer to this before anyone hears it. How much of the interview, and I think this will be more on Bill's end than Pablo's end, is going to be spent complaining about the aggregators?
Well, we're ready for it. I'll just get out in front of it. You're not scaring us away. Don't say a stray sentence the wrong way. You better be rehearsing your lines in the mirror because we're coming.
I think
get multiple editors on this show because one thing out of line and it's an article.
I might stay up till like midnight for this. Like I'm not going to wake up to this. I am going to hear it before I go to bed.
Well, I've been checking because sometimes when Bill has plans on Tuesday nights, he'll post the episodes early. And I thought if they've already, it's already common knowledge that this is happening, then maybe it's already in the can, but we don't know yet. It's 4:00 Eastern. It has not happened yet. All right. Hot mics.
Let's do it.
Something we like, dislike, just want to shout out or talk about from the week that was in sports media. I'll give a buffer because you're going to kind of circle back, I think, on some of our final segment there. This is not really sports related, but the WTF podcast with Marc Maron is ending. And as somebody who now covers media, it was, I guess, a little, poetic maybe that the NBA on TNT stuff ended, Around the Horn ended, this is ending now. It's been a lot of lasts lately. And sounds like Maron will continue for some part of the remainder of the year, but this was like one of the OG podcasts. Like it was probably maybe started just after Rogan, and it created a format. You know, there's no Conan O'Brien doing this. There's no podcast Golden Globe, which apparently is going to be a thing that is given out soon. And I just spent a lot of hours listening to this dude talk about his cats and talk about his feelings and I guess sobriety and interviewing people. I think he's one of the best interviewers that I've ever listened to, up there with anyone you would throw out. And it was more of a comedy focused thing. And, you know, he had his weird guitarists that he would bring on and stuff. So I'm not going to pretend like I was soaking up every single minute. But one of those things where tangentially I probably wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing now and caring about this nonsense the way that I do, if not for this podcast and for Marc Maron. So shout out and salute, and I will be listening a little more closely to the rest of this year's shows because they're the last ones we're going to get.
Admittedly, this is like just a total blind spot for me. Like I'm aware of the podcast. I'm aware of Marc Maron, but it's just something I never got into. So I guess like if you were to like, I guess what's like, you already kind of described its legacy. What's its primary appeal, I guess?
It's what's crazy about it is that all these imitators popped up, and similar to Rogan, I would say, he was still singular. Like the format of it, where it's 15 minutes at the beginning of him, he could talk about, you literally would never know. And I think plenty of people skip that part, but it would just be him, maybe in a hotel room on tour, whatever, just whether it was like, I hate Donald Trump, or it was like, I bought a cute cat. It would just be that. And then the way he would just like intersperse ads was super unique. Like all of a sudden he would just start doing an ad and like, then the interview, it was like this little world that he had created, like the interludes between stuff, like the ad into him talking and then him talking into the interview. And then he would always talk a little bit at the end, would be him playing guitar. It was just like, you really felt like you knew the guy. He resisted doing video this whole time. His show is still just audio. He got guests no one else would get. A lot of, like Paul Thomas Anderson, he has one of the only interviews he's ever done. He had Barack Obama on the show, which was a big news thing back when it happened as Obama was leaving. I don't know, just he really mastered the craft of like developing a community and an audience and really cutting through with guests in a way that like I do think the industry is really going to miss him. Like he did it better than almost anybody ever has. And I wouldn't say it's like my favorite podcast of all time or like I'm some kind of obsessive, but I've probably been listening for half my life at this point.
Yeah, it's wild. Crazy IMDb page. Lots of lots of twists and turns here.
Yeah, his wife passed in 2020, or his partner, so like he would kind of trauma dumped about that for a lot. I think there's a documentary being made about it. So he just had a knack for really what makes a podcast, I think, and like what the audience cares about and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, big legacy and will be missed. What's yours?
All right. I actually brought a prop for mine. Okay. So I'm going to wear this prop. You know, I like jerseys and sports apparel. So as I put this prop on, can you describe to our listening audience what the prop is?
All right. It's a Le Batard Show Miami number 20 basketball inspired jersey with Lebo's font on it, DLS logo, and Ben is now donning it. Okay.
We'll see if I can do this without making our producer Phil delete it, and I'll just restart and like talk about my college football dynasties again. But my hot mic segment is for the Dan Le Batard Show Reddit, which I have noticed has had a habit of talking about us a lot recently, specifically awful announcing, sometimes our podcast, specifically awful announcing, sometimes me.
Look, yeah, can I get some love just separately? You give your rant, but like I'm here, guys.
Sometimes
my name's on the screen.
Sometimes like every thread that involves us somehow like is like, yeah, and that Ben Axelrod guy, not a fan. I'm like, what did I do? I didn't even write this article. All right. So I've noticed I actually don't even spend a lot of time on Reddit. I feel like I should spend more time on Reddit because there's a lot of good content on Reddit, especially when it comes to these fan subreddits like the Dan Le Batard show, like Bill Simmons, like Pat McAfee. Like there's just a lot. I think it's good to be in touch with the fan bases of the shows that you're writing about. And so the two main complaints I see about awful announcing when it comes to the Dan Le Batard show Reddit are that we write about the show too much and that we allegedly steal like our content ideas from them. Like that we only know how to write about the show because of what they post on the Reddit. I'm going to address both of those separately. We write about the Dan Le Batard show with Stugotz because we cover sports media. We write about Meadowlark Media because we cover sports media. I personally think they're a big deal. I have been a listener of the show for 15 years at this point. How's that for bona fides? I get the show. I have friends who work at Meadowlark Media. It means a lot to me. We cover it because we think it's important. We cover sports media. That's what we do. And so whether it's good or bad, when the show is going through something, we are going to write about it, whether it's renewing their contract, whether it's Stugotz saying to blame Dan Le Batard and David Sampson for God Bless Football no longer being under the DraftKings umbrella, whatever it is, like we cover sports media. We think Meadowlark Media is a big deal. We're going to cover them. So that's one. Two, if there is something on your Reddit, odds are we're aware of it already. We listen to the show. Like we get the show. Brendon and I, we bond over the show. If you look at my X profile, my pinned tweet is a picture of me and Stugotz from the Super Bowl in 2020. Like it is, we get the show. And yeah, we spend some time on the Reddit, just like we spend some time on Bill Simmons' Reddit, just like we spend some time on Pat McAfee's Reddit. Sometimes the Reddit does tip us off to things. Like I'm not going to lie. That's not plagiarism. That's not nefarious. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's good.
Shout out to the Pat McAfee Reddit for giving me the Norby Williamson is a rat thing. That was a really nice scoop, you guys. I appreciate that big time.
Yeah, and you tipped me off today, Brendon did, about Dan letting the cat out of the bag that Pablo was going on Bill Simmons' podcast. And I think that was from the Reddit as well. I hadn't started listening to the show live. I typically listen to the DraftKings feed starting at 11. All that's to say, like, I have no beef with the Reddit. I've been friendly with some people on the Reddit. I guess I don't understand what the issue is in terms of like, if we're just a place to vent about when it comes to stuff that they don't want to direct toward the show. But I just don't, like, help me here, Brendon. Like, what's nefarious about a sports media website covering a sports media property?
I think I might be able to clear something up for our friends there as well, which is that our website name is negative, but our coverage is not only about negative things. I know that can be confusing to people, but, we've also covered Dan's eloquent monologues about gun violence or, funny stuff that the show gets up to, or when they got their DraftKings deal, or hiring Pablo back, all good news as well. So yeah, I think that might be helpful to understand. But as far as like, getting things from them or over covering the show, I mean, we're aligned here. I think it's totally fair game. And if you don't want us to get the tips from you guys, you could, start a Discord or something. I'll probably get into it. I'll probably get invited and log in and check it out too, but you can try to hide. I don't know.
The only thing they're going to take away from this is that we just admitted that like we do scan the Reddit at times and see like what the fan base is talking about. And sometimes that does lead to story.
We have a segment on the show called Views from the Subreddit. I don't think I've hidden that either.
Yeah. I don't know, like if we're covering the show, which we've established we are going to do, like, why wouldn't we want to be in touch with like what fans are saying about the show and the general sentiment about the show? And like, sometimes I'll message you privately, be like, hey, like, are you picking up on this, like on the show? And sometimes it's good to have like a Reddit to go to and see like what the general fans think about the show. So I don't know. I just don't.
We both have people within the Meadowlark universe that we talk to, and we also want to get the other side.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I like I said, I don't spend that much time on the Reddit, but my email is connected to all of the Reddits I follow, including the Dan Le Batard shows Reddit. And so sometimes like I'll get emails that are just like, here's all the shitty things they're saying about you on the Dan Le Batard show Reddit. Of course I click on it and it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like this comes with the territory, but I just like, as somebody who's passionate about the show and likes the show, and I've never hidden from that, I think there's some sort of disconnect in terms of like what our jobs here actually are.
We may have to start a Dan Le Batard show subreddit to talk shit about the subreddit. It might be where this is headed.
I've been on a podcast that I think was affiliated with the subreddit. Like, I don't know. I follow a bunch of the I guess high profile people in that subreddit on X. Like I've had friendly communications with them. Sometimes they'll DM me stuff and then say something different to me publicly, which is a little bit weird, but yeah, it's fine. I just don't, this idea, like we're out to get the show. Like it could not be more misguided. Like we cover sports media. Dan Le Batard is a big player in sports media. Meadowlark Media is a big player in sports media, and we're going to continue to cover sports media, including the Dan Le Batard show.
Put that sounder in our intro music. We're going to continue to cover sports media. That'll wrap us for the week. Follow or subscribe if you have not already. We're here for you every Wednesday. We're also at awfulannouncing.com, breaking this stuff down minute to minute, and across social media, wherever you are, we are there as well. X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and beyond. We'll catch you next time.